This weekend, the gospel reading is of the wedding feast at Cana. And it's cool because the last 2 weekends and then this weekend, these three gospels together tell three stories that in the ancient church, they always understood as all going together. Which is weird because they seem very unrelated. But the wisdom of the early church fathers, they're like, no, these are all connected. So 2 weekends ago was Epiphany. So that was the gospel reading where the three wise men come to worship Jesus in the manger. Then last weekend was the baptism of John, or baptism of Jesus by John in the Jordan. And then this weekend is the wedding feast of Cana. And you're like, what do those three things have to do with each other? But the early church, in, I would say, like the sheer power of the Holy Spirit that was working, especially at that time, and in the wisdom of those first fathers, some of the earliest prayers we have in the Liturgy of the Hours lump those three together. And the reason is this. They saw that in all three, God is manifesting something about his mission. So in the first one, the Epiphany, what he's showing us is that he has come for everybody. And that he's even reaching out to like the pagans, you know, to the ends of the world at that time. And you've got these three wise men coming from far, far off because this Messiah has come for everyone. And even they have noticed that there's been like this seismic like shift in all of creation. Something big has just changed. And then the baptism in the Jordan, Jesus is manifesting his mission in a special way that could only be understood by the Jews, by the ancient Israelites who had been prepared for a long time to receive this. They knew who Yahweh was, and they had heard prophecies about this Messiah, but who is he? Well, in the baptism in the Jordan, he clearly says, Yahweh says, "This is my son." So they come to understand who this guy actually is. And then at the wedding feast of Cana, he chooses to manifest his miracles for the first time. So we can start to see what the power of the Holy Spirit, the power of the Messiah actually can do. And of course, God does nothing by accident. So the fact that he does this at a wedding feast in the middle of a marriage means something. Because what is the gospel? What's the mission that he's come to spread? It's the gospel of love. And so God, by no accident at all, decides that where he's going to first work his power, the power of the gospel of love, is in the middle of a marriage. Because what is a marriage but the clearest sort of natural sign to you and me of what love is supposed to be? And what is love supposed to be? I mean, maybe there's where like his mission, his gospel really can speak to us. Because we live in a culture where, like, if we think of love within marriage, we pretty much think of all the powerful emotions, the feeling. Oftentimes we think of that as being like the epitome of love. What's at the core of love? It's how awesome I feel, you know? That great experience of falling in love. And there's nothing wrong with the feelings, obviously. Like, God made them, and he made them for a reason. In fact, as John Paul II, who's up here, farthest to the right, you know, of the popes up in the sanctuary here, as Pope John Paul II says really clearly in Theology of the Body, he says that this whole idea of the power of the emotions of falling in love is a gift that God gave us to propel us towards encountering another person. And that maybe we could say like the great trap, you know, of starting to think that the emotions, the feelings, are kind of at the core of love is that it actually then prevents us from getting to actually encounter the person. That we just go up towards them until we start experiencing the feelings, and then we don't go the next step to actually encountering them. Whereas in reality, what is the gospel of love that he's come to preach? What does it look like? Looks like that, as we've said several times. That the real love is not, at the core of true love is not the feeling, it's a choice. A choice to choose what's good for the beloved. For the one who I really care about, to choose what's good for them. Even to the point of me dying if I have to. That is the core of real love. The emotions are awesome, they're great, they're powerful, but they're not it. And if we get trapped just in the emotions, it will only lead to pain. Because I'm never actually going to then have the power to lay down my life for the other. And they're always going to feel empty. And then I'll always feel empty. Jesus did not accidentally manifest his first miracle, his first sign, in his preaching of the gospel of love in a marriage. It's because marriage is supposed to be the image of that for you and me. The image of actually choosing to lay down my life for the other. This is why the church, I was just talking about the old church fathers, preaching us the wisdom about how all these things are connected. The current, wisest popes, bishops, priests, everyone who I've ever heard, who strikes me as, wow, they get it. They feed me spiritually. What do they all say? That the big virtue that we need to be striving for in our time is chastity. Because we live in a world that really seems to not care about chastity. And the danger of that, like I was just saying, is that then I stunt my growth in my heart in being able to learn how to actually love. Because I choose to instead enter into it more or less for the feeling, which is what can I get here? And I'm training my heart to look for where can I find pleasure? Versus fighting for chastity, which then protects my heart to learn how to do this. To learn how to actually lay down my life for the other. So in a really practical way, what does that look like for us? Well, there's tons of ways, obviously, that probably all of us need to grow in chastity. But I'll just mention two that have been on my mind and my heart a lot recently, both personally, but also as a spiritual father. One, fighting for purity on the internet. It's a huge battle, and it's something that we all need to be fighting for, because again, if we're not, what we're doing is we are stunting our growth in the ability to actually love. We're training our heart to look instead for what can I get, rather than true love, which is what can I give. I'm not going to be able to learn so long as I'm not putting up a fight. So many struggle in this area, and I get it. It's a hard, hard struggle, fighting for purity, especially on the internet. And so I just say to you today that if you find that this is a struggle for you and you're fighting, way to go, because it's a really hard struggle. And it's one that so many struggle with, and way to go fighting for true chastity, which will protect your heart's ability to actually be able to love. And if you're not fighting at all, it's time to start. That if you find you're not going, you're not visiting the confessional because of falling in this area, or if you're not doing stuff, trying to figure out how do I maybe lock down my phone? How do I find a close, trusted friend who can walk with me through this? How do I, install Covenant Eyes or something like this? If we're not doing anything, then we're basically like those people in the gospel who are saying, Lord, I have no interest in your gospel of true love, because there's something in it I really don't want to even try. I don't want to give up my old way of life. Like Herod, who's terrified at the coming of this new gospel. Or like the scribes and Pharisees who show up at the Jordan River, but only to chastise Jesus. They don't want to hear what he actually says. If we're not putting up a fight, we're becoming like them, the ones who stand against the gospel. And the other area that I think is really important to just be aware of is really for a special kind of subset of people, those who aren't yet married. In the culture right now, it is just so commonplace and accepted that I can just live together before marriage. But if I'm doing that, I'm not fighting the fight to protect my heart so that I can actually love. And I'm not training my heart to learn how to give, rather than instead, and I'm not saying that there's not real love there. There could be real love between the two of you. And yet we're stunting our growth in learning how to sacrifice for one another if we take the easy way and just move in together. Because then, if things start to get tough, I can always fall back on something that simply just gives me immediate pleasure, versus learning how to strive when push comes to shove and things get hard, to keep laying down my life for the other and to be willing to die for the other. We need to be fighting for chastity. It's no surprise that in this world where over the last 50, 60, 70, whatever years, we've been getting more and more lax in all these areas, that what are we seeing? Society is starting to kind of crumble around us a little bit. Increased depression, loneliness, because no one is actually experiencing someone laying down their life for them, and so they feel deeply lonely. They might be sleeping next to somebody and feel deeply, deeply lonely because no one's actually laying down their life for them. It's no wonder that, all of these struggles are increasing as we start to not fight for chastity anymore. If I want true peace and true happiness and the reward of true joy and love in life, I have to learn how to sacrifice. And in a chief way, that starts by fighting for chastity. Jesus, on this weekend where you reveal to us how you cared so deeply about marriage by working your first miracle in the midst of a wedding feast, we ask that you send your Holy Spirit into our hearts, into our marriages, to give us the strength to fight for chastity and the ability to lay down our lives for those who we love, so that we can all experience the fruits of true love.